Now stop right there. Put your hands up now.
On your knees.
Do it now.
Officer, I just came from inside.
Where'd you get that PS5? We got a call about someone matching your description walking out without paying.
Sir, from the store inside. I paid for it.
Where's your receipt?
It's
Don't
in the
move.
box.
Keep your hands where I can see them.
Oh my God.
What do you do when you're innocent? You have proof. You comply with every order, but you are still treated like a criminal. Officer Pugh saw a black kid with a PS5 and made an assumption. That assumption traumatized an innocent teenager and exposed a truth an entire city tried to ignore. The body camera timestamp blinked red on June 24, 2022, when Officer Ryland Pugh made the command that would end his career. "On your knees! Hands up!" A black teenager dropped to the scorching concrete of a Best Buy parking lot, a sealed PlayStation 5 Pro box hitting the pavement in front of him like evidence at a crime scene. His hands shot into the air, palms trembling, fingers spread wide in surrender. He knelt there, terrified, shoulders shaking, eyes wide with panic behind rectangular glasses, while a white police officer circled him like prey that needed to be controlled. People were already filming. Before we go any further, hit subscribe, because stories like this don't just matter, they save lives. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, because this injustice isn't confined to one parking lot. It's everywhere. "Sir, I just bought it," the teenager pleaded, his voice cracking. "I have the receipt." "Shut up," Pugh snapped. "We got a call about someone matching your description walking out without paying." The teenager's breath caught. "What? No, My mom is still inside. She can tell you." "I said shut up," Pugh barked, stepping closer. Too close. His hand moved toward his belt. "Keep your hands where I can see them." The PS5 box sat there between them. White and blue Sony packaging. Pristine. Sealed. The kind of gift a kid saves for months to buy. The kind that should mean celebration, not humiliation. "Officer, please," the teenager whispered. "It's my birthday. I can show you the receipt. It's right in the box." That was the wrong thing to say. Pugh's jaw tightened. His hand hovered near his weapon. Not on it, but close enough to make a point. "You people always have a story," he said. "You people." Around them, car doors stopped closing. Footsteps froze mid-stride. Phones rose like silent witnesses. A woman's voice whispered, "He's just a kid." Nobody moved to help. The teenager's name was Caleb Wagner. He was 17 years old, turning 18 that very day. Slim build, athletic but not threatening. He wore a black hoodie with yellow stripes across the chest, the kind every teenager owned. Blue jeans that still had the price tag crease, and dark sneakers he'd gotten for Christmas. His afro had blonde highlights that caught the sunlight. Behind his glasses, his eyes showed everything. Confusion, terror, disbelief. He looked like someone's little brother, someone's student, someone's son. Caleb was a high school senior with straight A's and 3 college acceptance letters sitting on his desk at home. He spent his Saturdays tutoring younger kids at the community center, teaching them basketball and helping with homework. He'd saved his own money for 11 months, every dollar from that part-time job, to buy this PlayStation. Not for himself, for his twin sibling's birthday next week. What nobody in that parking lot knew yet was that Caleb Wagner's father was federal judge Eugene Wagner. One of the most powerful jurists in the district, the man currently presiding over 3 high-profile civil rights cases. What nobody knew was that Caleb's mother, Audrey Espinoza, was a civil rights attorney who'd sued this very police department twice and won both times. What nobody knew was that Judge Wagner was supposed to be here today, taking his son to buy this birthday gift. But a court emergency had kept him away, so he'd sent Audrey instead, and she was still inside Best Buy, standing in the battery aisle, completely unaware that her son was on his knees in the parking lot. And what nobody knew yet was that in exactly 23 minutes, Officer Ryland Pugh's entire life would be over. But none of that should have mattered, because Caleb had done absolutely nothing wrong. 90 seconds earlier, everything had been perfect. Caleb had pushed through the Best Buy doors carrying the one thing he'd been saving for all year, a PlayStation 5 Pro sealed in pristine white and blue Sony packaging. The sun was bright, the sky was clear, and life felt exactly like an 18th birthday should feel. His mother had kissed his forehead and told him to wait by the car while she grabbed batteries she'd forgotten. "I'll be right out, baby," she'd said, and Caleb had smiled because he still didn't mind when she called him that. He'd walked across the tan concrete, dodging cracks out of habit, the box held carefully with both hands. His black hoodie with the yellow stripes caught the sunlight. His glasses reflected the sky. He was 30 feet from their silver SUV when he heard the voice that would change everything. "Hey, stop right there!" Caleb turned. A white police officer was striding toward him, hand already moving toward his belt. Officer Ryland Pugh, badge number 4172, body camera blinking red. "Where'd you get that?" Pugh demanded, pointing at the PS5. "From inside, sir," Caleb said carefully, the way his parents had taught him. "Always say sir, always stay calm, always comply." "I just bought it." "Oh yeah?" Pugh stepped closer. Too close. Close enough that Caleb could smell coffee on his breath. "We got a call about someone matching your description walking out without paying." Caleb's stomach dropped. The world tilted slightly. "No, sir, I have the receipt. It's right in the box. I can show you." "On your knees!" Pugh barked. "Now!" Time fractured into sharp, jagged pieces. Caleb saw a woman across the lot freeze, phone half raised to her ear. Saw a man by a shopping cart turn to stare, his hand still on the handle. Saw his own reflection in Pugh's sunglasses, eyes wide, mouth open, looking younger than 17, looking scared. "Sir, please, I didn't do anything." "I said on your knees! Hands up!" Caleb's knees hit the pavement. The impact sent pain shooting up his thighs, sharp and immediate. The PS5 box sat in front of him, 2 feet away, perfect and untouched, mocking him with its innocence. His hands shot into the air, fingers spread wide, palms forward, the universal gesture of surrender, the pose he'd seen in too many videos, the pose he'd prayed he'd never have to make. "Please," Caleb's voice cracked, breaking on the word. "It's my birthday. I can show you the receipt. It's right there in the box, please." "Shut up," Pugh snapped. He began to circle Caleb slowly, boots scraping against concrete, predator inspecting prey. "You people always have a story. You people." The words landed like a physical slap. Around them, more phones rose. The woman in the tan cardigan whispered to her friend, "He's just a kid." The man by the shopping cart pulled out his own phone. Inside the stores, faces pressed against windows. But nobody moved to help. Nobody intervened. They just watched and recorded, silent witnesses to an injustice unfolding in real time. Inside Best Buy, Audrey Espinoza stood in the battery aisle, her phone buzzing insistently in her purse. She pulled it out, irritated at the interruption. A notification glowed on the screen. Live, police stop at Best Buy parking lot. Her heart stopped. Her hands went cold. She clicked the notification with shaking fingers. The video loaded. She saw her son, kneeling, hands raised high, mouth open in pleading, a police officer circling him like a threat. She ran. What nobody in that parking lot understood yet, what Officer Pugh couldn't possibly know, was that Caleb Wagner wasn't just any teenager. His father, Federal Judge Eugene Wagner, was one of the most respected jurists in the federal district, currently presiding over 3 high-profile civil rights cases that had made national news. His mother was a civil rights attorney who'd built her career on cases exactly like this, who'd sued this very police department twice and emerged victorious both times. The PlayStation wasn't just a birthday gift. It was paid for with money Caleb had earned himself, tutoring kids at the community center every Saturday for a year, teaching them math and reading and basketball, investing in his community the way his parents had taught him. And Officer Ryland Pugh, badge number 4172, 11 years on the force, 3 complaints filed and dismissed, had just made the catastrophic mistake that would end his career, ignite a city, and expose the lie that too many people were still comfortable telling themselves. But none of that should have mattered. None of it. Because Caleb had done absolutely nothing wrong. "Empty your pockets," Pugh ordered. Caleb's breath hitched. "Sir, I have the receipt. It's right in the box. If you just let me—" "I didn't ask about a receipt. I said empty your pockets." Caleb's hands shook as he lowered them slowly, reaching for his wallet. The moment his fingers moved toward his pocket, Pugh's hand shot to his weapon. Phones zoomed in. Caleb froze, his hand suspended in midair, terrified to move, terrified to stay still. "Slowly," Pugh warned, his voice cold. Time: 10:47 a.m. 5 minutes detained. A small crowd had formed in a loose semicircle around the scene. Maisie Norton, a middle-aged white woman in a tan cardigan, stood between parked cars, her blonde hair catching the sun. Her phone was raised, recording, her face twisted in horror at what she was witnessing. "He's just a baby," she whispered to her friend, Liana Valencia, a Latina woman in her 30s who stood beside her, equally transfixed. Near the shopping carts, Callan Poole, a young white man in a baseball cap and white t-shirt, watched with his mouth pressed into a tight line of anger. He pulled out his own phone and began recording from a different angle. Inside the stores, employees pressed their faces against the glass windows. Alaric Reyes, a Best Buy manager, recognized Caleb immediately. He'd checked him out 15 minutes ago, had joked with him about the PS5 being hard to find, had wished him happy birthday. Alaric's stomach turned. He grabbed the store's copy of the receipt and ran outside. "Dispatch," Pugh said into his radio, loud enough for everyone to hear, loud enough to perform his authority. "I've got a suspect refusing to cooperate. Possible theft. Requesting backup." Caleb's head snapped up, tears streaming down his face now. "I am cooperating. I've done everything you asked. I haven't refused anything." "Did I say you could speak?" Pugh cut him off. The tears weren't from fear anymore. They were from rage, from the crushing unfairness of it all. This was his birthday. He'd worked so hard for this, saved every dollar, done everything right. And now he was kneeling on burning pavement in front of strangers while a cop lied about him on a recorded radio channel. Time: 10:52 a.m. 10 minutes detained. Maisie Norton's hands shook as she filmed. She'd seen this before. 2 years ago, in this same parking lot, different kid, different officer. That time, nobody had filmed. The kid got arrested. Charges were dropped 6 months later, but his scholarship was gone. His future derailed. She'd thought about it for months afterward, wished she'd done something, anything. Not this time. She tapped the screen. Go live on Facebook. Within seconds, viewers began flooding in. What's your name? Pugh demanded. Caleb Wagner, sir. Caleb what? Wagner. Pugh pulled out his notepad with exaggerated slowness. Spell it. Caleb spelled it, letter by letter. His voice was steady now. Tired. Resigned. He'd stopped crying, stopped pleading. He just answered, flat and hollow. Where do you live? Caleb gave his address. It was a nice neighborhood, the kind with tree-lined streets and 2-car garages. Pugh knew it. Too expensive for a black teenager unless... His eyes narrowed with suspicion. That your parents' house? Pugh asked, voice dripping skepticism. Yes, sir. What do they do? Caleb hesitated. His father's voice echoed in his mind. Never use my name as a shield. If you're innocent, you're innocent. Your innocence shouldn't depend on who I am. My mom's a lawyer, Caleb said quietly. My dad's a judge. Pugh laughed. Not a real laugh. A mocking, dismissive sound that made the watching crowd shift uncomfortably. Sure, kid, he said. And I'm the president. Time, 10:58 a.m. 16 minutes detained. A second police cruiser pulled into the lot, moving slowly, deliberately. The door opened, and Sergeant Abby Randolph stepped out. She was a black woman in her 40s, 18 years on the force, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at the scene, at the kneeling teenager, at the crowd of phones, at Pugh's aggressive stance, and her jaw tightened. Pugh, she called, walking over with measured steps. What's going on here? Possible theft, Pugh said without looking at her, still focused on Caleb. Kid walked out with a PS5. No receipt. I have the receipt, Caleb said desperately, his voice cracking with renewed hope. It's in the box. Please, ma'am, just let me show you. Please. Randolph's eyes moved from Caleb's tear-stained face to the pristine PS5 box, to the crowd of filming witnesses. Something was very wrong here. She could feel it. Son, she said gently, crouching slightly to meet his eyes. What's your name? Caleb Wagner. Randolph went very still. Her expression shifted, hardened. Wagner, she repeated slowly. Are you Judge Eugene Wagner's son? Caleb nodded, not trusting his voice. Pugh's smirk faded. The color drained from his face, and in that parking lot, with a dozen phones recording, everything changed. Pugh, Randolph said slowly, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. Do you know who this is? Some kid with a story, Pugh muttered, but his voice had lost its edge. This is Federal Judge Eugene Wagner's son, Randolph cut him off, each word landing like a gavel strike. Judge Wagner, Federal District Court. Do you understand what you've done? The parking lot went silent. Every phone was still recording. Pugh's face drained of what little color remained. He didn't say. How long has he been detained? Randolph demanded. Pugh checked his watch, his hand shaking slightly. About 20 minutes. 20 minutes, Randolph repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Without checking the receipt he's been offering to show you since the beginning. She turned to Caleb, her voice softening. Son, is the receipt in the box? Yes, ma'am, Caleb whispered, his voice hoarse from pleading, taped to the top. May I open it? Caleb nodded, unable to speak. Randolph opened the box with careful, deliberate movements. The receipt slid out, crisp and official. She read it aloud for the cameras. Purchase time, 10:27 a.m. Paid in full, $699 by $999, plus tax. Cashier? She looked up at the crowd. A young man stepped forward. Alaric Reyes, the Best Buy manager said, holding up his own copy of the receipt. I checked him out myself, 15 minutes ago. Wished him happy birthday. Pugh opened his mouth, but no words came. A black SUV pulled into the lot, moving fast. Not a police vehicle. Federal plates gleamed in the sunlight. The driver's door flew open. Federal Judge Eugene Wagner stepped out, still wearing his court robes, the black fabric billowing like a storm cloud. His face was carved from stone, eyes burning with controlled fury. Behind him, Audrey Espinoza emerged from the passenger side, her eyes red and swollen, her hand still clutching her phone showing the live stream. Pugh actually took a step back. Officer, Judge Wagner's voice could have frozen fire. Step away from my son. Judge Wagner, Pugh stammered, his earlier confidence evaporating. I didn't know. You didn't know what? Judge Wagner moved forward, each step measured and deliberate. You didn't know he was my son? Or you didn't know he was innocent? Silence stretched across the parking lot, like a held breath. Because one of those shouldn't matter, Judge Wagner continued, his voice deadly calm. My son told you he had a receipt. He offered to show it to you multiple times. Instead, you detained him, humiliated him, and lied to dispatch, claiming he refused to cooperate. On his 18th birthday. Audrey rushed past the officer and dropped to her knees next to Caleb, pulling him into her arms. He buried his face in her shoulder and finally let the tears come freely, great shaking sobs of relief and trauma and rage. How long? Judge Wagner asked Randolph, his eyes never leaving Pugh. 25 minutes, Your Honor. Judge Wagner turned his full attention to Pugh. You detained my son for 25 minutes, without probable cause, without checking the evidence he repeatedly offered you, in front of dozens of witnesses, all of whom are filming. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Officer Pugh, I want you to understand something. I've presided over 3 police brutality cases this year alone. I've seen good officers and bad officers. I've seen honest mistakes, and I've seen deliberate malice. He gestured to Caleb, still shaking in his mother's arms. This wasn't a mistake. A third vehicle arrived, a police captain's car pulling up fast. Captain Dallas Dennis stepped out, his face grim. Randolph had called him. He'd been watching the live stream. He knew exactly how bad this was. Officer Pugh, Captain Dennis said, his voice clipped and professional. Turn off your body camera. Sir, I can explain. Now. The red light blinked off, but dozens of civilian phones stayed on, recording everything. You're suspended effective immediately, Dennis continued. Pending internal investigation. Badge and weapon. Now. Pugh's hands trembled as he unclipped his badge, then his weapon. He looked small suddenly, diminished, a man watching his entire career crumble in real time. Captain, Judge Wagner said quietly, but his voice carried across the lot. I'll be filing a formal complaint with Internal Affairs. My wife will be filing a civil rights lawsuit, and every news station in this state already has this footage. Captain Dennis nodded, his jaw tight. I understand, Your Honor. Judge Wagner turned to the crowd, to all those phones still recording. To everyone who filmed this, thank you. Your footage will be part of the official record. Please send copies to the police department and to this email address. He pulled cards from his robe and began handing them out to witnesses. Then he looked at his son. Caleb stood now, still trembling, supported by his mother. The PS5 box lay forgotten on the ground. "Caleb," Judge Wagner said softly, his voice breaking for the first time. "Did you do everything right?" "Yes, sir," Caleb whispered. "Did you comply with every order?" "Yes, sir." "Did you offer your receipt?" "Yes, sir." Judge Wagner's voice cracked. "And it still wasn't enough." Caleb shook his head, fresh tears streaming down his face. Judge Wagner looked out at the crowd, at the cameras, at the watching world. "That," he said, his voice raw with pain and determination, "is what we're trying to change." 24 hours later, the video had 15 million views and climbing. Justice. For Caleb was trending nationally, internationally, everywhere. News anchors played the footage in slow motion, analyzing every moment, every word, every gesture. "You can hear the terror in his voice when he says, 'It's my birthday,'" one anchor said, her own voice breaking. 25 minutes, on his 18th birthday, for a crime he didn't commit, another added. The officer never checked the receipt. Not once, despite being offered multiple times. The footage played on loop, Caleb on his knees, hands in the air, mouth open in pleading, Pugh circling him like a predator. The crowd of witnesses. The phones recording. Judge Wagner's devastating question, and it still wasn't enough. Officer Ryland Pugh was suspended without pay pending investigation. Internal affairs moved fast, knowing the entire world was watching. What they found made the department's blood run cold. 3 similar incidents in Pugh's file, all dismissed by supervisors, all involving black teenagers, all following the same pattern of aggression and racial profiling. His police union initially defended him, issuing a statement about due process and the complexity of split-second decisions. Then they saw the polling numbers. 73% of the city wanted him fired. 68% wanted criminal charges. The union went silent. 1 week later, Caleb stood in front of his high school assembly. Bonnie Zuniga, the principal, had asked him to speak. He'd said no at first, wasn't ready, couldn't face that many eyes. But then he thought about the kids who didn't have federal judges for fathers, who didn't have viral videos, who suffered in silence. He'd said yes. "A week ago," Caleb began, his voice steady now in a way it hadn't been on that parking lot pavement. "I turned 18. I bought myself a PlayStation with money I'd saved for a year, tutoring kids every Saturday, and I ended up on my knees in a parking lot with my hands in the air, begging a police officer to look at a receipt." The auditorium was silent, 1,000 students and faculty holding their breath. "I want you to understand something," Caleb continued, his hands gripping the podium. "I did everything right. I was polite. I complied with every order. I offered proof of my innocence repeatedly, and it didn't matter. Because Officer Pugh saw my skin before he saw me." He paused, letting that truth settle. "My dad's a federal judge. My mom's a civil rights attorney. I had people who could help me, who could make phone calls, who could hold people accountable. But what about the kids who don't? What about the Calebs who don't have powerful parents or lawyers or resources or people who care enough to film?" Students leaned forward in their seats. Some were crying. "That's who I'm speaking for now," Caleb said, his voice gaining strength. "Not for me. For them. For every black and brown kid who gets stopped, questioned, detained, humiliated for existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. The applause started small, then built into a roar. Outside the school, the protests had started small too. 50 people outside the police station on day 1, holding signs, "Check the receipt," and 25 minutes too long. By day 3, it was 5,000, blocking traffic, demanding change. By day 7, the mayor called an emergency press conference announcing policy reforms. New training requirements focused on de-escalation and implicit bias. Mandatory body camera reviews for all detentions. A civilian oversight board with real power. Zero tolerance for racial profiling with immediate termination for violations. Officer Ryland Pugh resigned rather than face termination and the public hearing that would come with it. He released a statement through his lawyer. "I regret any distress caused." No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just regret for getting caught. He'd never work in law enforcement again. But Caleb paid a price too, one that didn't make the news. Nightmares that jolted him awake, gasping and disoriented, anxiety attacks in parking lots, his heart racing at the sight of police cars. Hesitation and fear around officers, even the good ones, because how could you tell the difference until it was too late? His therapist, Dr. Sienna Chavez, told him it was normal, expected even. PTSD from a traumatic event, she'd said. Your brain trying to protect you by staying hypervigilant. It's okay to not be okay, she'd told him during their second session. Caleb nodded, but he also kept moving forward. School assemblies, community forums, city council meetings, a TEDx talk that went viral in its own right, racking up millions of views. They'll judge you before they know you, he'd say, his message consistent and clear. Stay calm, stay kind, comply to survive, but never, ever forget your worth. And never stop fighting for the ones who can't fight for themselves. 3 months later, the PlayStation 5 still sat in Caleb's room, mostly untouched. He'd turned 18, finally, but that day in June had aged him in ways a birthday never could. The box was open now, the console set up, but he rarely played. Every time he looked at it, he was back on that pavement, hands in the air, terrified and humiliated. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Caleb?" His twin siblings, Finley and Natasha, stood in his doorway. 12 years old, mirror images of each other, their faces bright with hope. "Can we play?" Caleb looked at the console, at the controllers he'd bought with such excitement. For weeks he hadn't been able to touch them without his chest tightening, without seeing Pugh's face, without hearing "you people." But his siblings' faces were so hopeful, so innocent, so unaware of how that gift had nearly destroyed him. "Yeah," he said, managing a smile that almost reached his eyes. "Yeah, let's play." Their laughter filled the room as they dove onto his bed, grabbing controllers, arguing over which game to start with. Normal kid things. Things Caleb had almost forgotten how to do. Later that night, Judge Wagner found Caleb alone on the back porch, staring up at the stars. The summer air was warm, cicadas singing their evening song. "You okay?" his father asked, settling into the chair beside him. "I don't know," Caleb admitted, his voice quiet. "I keep thinking, what if you weren't my dad? What if Mom wasn't a lawyer? What if nobody had filmed? How many kids are out there right now, on their knees, and nobody cares because they don't have what I have?" Judge Wagner was silent for a long moment. "Then we fight," he said finally. We fight to make sure the next kid doesn't need a federal judge for a father to be treated with basic human dignity. Is that enough? Caleb asked, turning to look at him. No, his father said honestly, meeting his eyes. But it's what we have, and we use it. They sat in silence, father and son, watching the stars slowly emerge. I'm proud of you, Judge Wagner said finally, his voice thick with emotion. Not because of who I am, because of who you are. Because you took pain and turned it into purpose. Across the city, in the police station, Officer Ryland Pugh's locker stood empty, his name scraped off the metal door. His badge, his career, his identity, all gone. At City Hall, Caleb stood at a podium before the council, speaking with the confidence of someone who'd found his voice in trauma. The audience nodded, took notes, listened. In the police academy training room, Sergeant Abby Randolph played the body cam footage for new recruits. This, she said, pausing on Caleb's terrified face, is what not to do. This is what we're trying to end. In the Best Buy parking lot, a new sign hung near the entrance. Best Buy supports all customers. Discrimination will not be tolerated. We see you. We value you. On Caleb's desk, a letter from his top choice university, thick and official. Full academic scholarship, room and board included, a future bright with possibility. And in his room, Caleb and his siblings collapsed in laughter, controllers in hand, finally just being kids again. The PS5 hummed quietly. No longer a symbol of trauma, but slowly, painfully, becoming what it was always meant to be. A gift, a celebration, a reminder that joy could exist alongside pain. Caleb looked directly into the camera, his face serious but strong. They tried to make me a criminal for buying a birthday present, he said. They failed, because the truth and 12 million witnesses was stronger than their hate. The screen faded to black. White text appeared. Officer Ryland Pugh resigned from law enforcement. Caleb Wagner starts college this fall. The fight continues. Another line appeared below. This is one story. How many more aren't recorded? Subscribe. Comment where you're from, because this could happen anywhere. And it has to stop everywhere. The text lingered, then slowly faded, leaving only darkness and the weight of truth.